These models use shapes, and we can see the shapes here in this slide. So a model can be a rule model when you have a condition and then go into a consequence, like someone that drinks a lot may end up going to the hospital. A formula model when you have some characteristics like your occupation, if you're a car owner, or your medical record coming up to a number or a rating that's gonna rate you to whether you're a good customer or bad customer in the case of credit cards that we just mentioned. Or a decision tree, or a tree that separates people into buckets, like, well, if you come from an area where there is a virus going on, so you're more likely. So those kind of decisions, splitting population, they call the tree models. Or now a very popular, but it's been around for many years, is the graph models. And graph models are being applied in social media because all to do with your connection, your friends, and so on. So they can use also those kind of information of your friends to try to predict either if a term or something is going to become viral, or if you're going to become influentiated to buy something because your friends have bought it in the past. So how actually the model is developed inside a company? Well, a model is developed first by extracting some characteristics. We're going to discuss later what the characteristics are, but it can be if you use bike or car, if you smoke or if you have a lot of money, if you fly, or if you're Spanish, English, American, or Indian, or so on. We normally use, as we said, statistical tools like SPSS, SAS, R, Weka, MATLAB, Python. Those tools, well, depends on the purpose that you're using, and some industries use one more than the other. Okay, I won't discuss this right now, but in class we can discuss that in more details. So again, we see the type of models, the rule, formula, trees, and graphs that we mentioned in a previous slide. So let's see as well what big data is bringing to the table here. Well, big data is bringing extra variety. Big data is bringing extra volume, and big data is bringing extra velocity. And it's actually enabling the scale out of analytics. So let's review only one aspect. Let's review extra variety. For more aspects, you need to come to my class. Extra variety, let's see the map of information. Companies normally use the information that comes in the inner cycle, that means internal information that they have in their own customer base. So customer demographic information, for example. And then companies start using behavior information, or sometimes they use entity interaction information, how you do connections with your other friends. They go in for external providers to buy information about your use or things like that. They can use the big data, so like Google search, social network information. And here's where big data plays a big part, because companies are not actually ready to use all those kind of information. So the technology that the big data environment is bringing is enabling companies to use those kind of entity connections, new algorithms coming in like social scoring, or big data with the Google search and social networks. Environmental, macroeconomical, social calendar, and things like that. For example, making use of the temperature if you want to sell ice creams or if you want to sell umbrellas. So if you're a supermarket and you want to sell umbrellas or ice creams, you can't have the two at the same time. But based on the temperature, you can decide which one you're using, or the weather forecast to be more exact. So extra variety. Well, the extra variety again enables us an amazing big examples of applications of models, from attrition score, credit, social scoring, as I mentioned before, response score in sales, product and profitability in finance, info from operations, operation optimizations, application score for risk, behavior score, and marketing mix modeling. In marketing, life cycle analysis to see where you are in your life at this moment. Let's now review some success cases. of companies using those kind of models and using it for their own success. So to do that, I will introduce you three small concepts. One is analytical driven core, analytical driven blended, and analytical driven startup. And the reason for having these three different concepts is because inside a company, if you have an analytical driven core, the company will be very different and the way to approach analytics will be very different. So you as a student, you can go and consider a startup as the same as a core company or a blended company. You will see some examples right here and right now. Analytical driven core companies. So I can mention in Brazil, Credit Card. In the US, Capital One, Google, Amazon.com, Amazon, and Tinkoff in Russia. So what's the big element of these companies? Well, the big element is if you remove analytics from Google, for example, Google uses analytics to decide the ranking of the page. So the top page will be the one that Google believes that will be more likely for you to click based on your search. And the one in the bottom will be the less likely because it's related to many variables that they're using and so on. They started it with the algorithm called PageRank and now evolved in many different ways. But if you take that algorithm away from Google, Google will still remains with the infrastructure, servers that they have, all the information that they have, all the pages that they've web searched and they spidered already. But again, what is going to happen is that they will show you in a random order and they will lose to Yahoo. The software, the solution will be worse than Yahoo. So they will lose their position of best in the market. And the same would happen with Capital One if they lose all the analytical skills and algorithms and models that they have. The same with Amazon and the recommendation system. Amazon recommendation systems is an important part of their business and they cannot live without it. If we move to analytics-driven blended companies, and I can mention here Coca-Cola, El Corte Inglés here in Spain, and National Express in the UK or Barclays with Barclays card. What we're going to review is that Coca-Cola is a very old company and it has a lot of different competitive advantages from amount of cash that they have a vast distribution that goes everywhere. Well, Coca-Cola says it sells everywhere in the planet. It doesn't sell in the moon because there's no human there, otherwise they would. That's what they say. And Coca-Cola has this different competitive advantage already. And I can say, well, with mycokerewards.com, they've created an analytical environment where Coca-Cola, that is an industry making Coke, producing Coke, but not actually selling for the end customer. They sell for distributors, that sells for the retailers, that sells for you. Coca-Cola, with My Coke Reward, got a lot of information because you get the Coke, you get the code, go online and respond some questions and play around with Coke somehow. And with that, they get enough information about the end users and they become so knowledgeable about the end users that they start selling and making money of this knowledge, selling for their own distributors and their own retailers to improve the sales of Coca-Cola. So they actually made the analytical part of their business a business unit profitable on its own. So if you take analytics away from Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola will remain being Coca-Cola. It's probably gonna lose 20 or 30% of their revenue, but will remain bigger than Pepsi anyway. So I hope Pepsi is not seeing me now. So analytics-driven startup. So I can mention Google in 2001, Flurry, and EB Bank in Brazil back in the past before it was sold. An analytics-driven startup is basically a data crunching company. So a more recent example actually is Uber, the taxi or application, that they basically focused in improving or making the travel for the taxi driver and for the end user the shortest possible. So the taxi driver doesn't need to wait, doesn't need to be running about, doesn't need to be, or it needs to be closer to the end customer, and the end customer needs to move to the road as well. It doesn't call a taxi where I am exactly. It says go 2 squares that way and you're gonna get a taxi better than where you are right now. So it tries to do this all with analytics. And again, it's a startup, but it's a startup that is beginning with the heart and the core of an analytics-driven company. Flurry as well, making this competition for Google with advertisement. eBay trying to search, eBay was a bank in Brazil that was moving away from being a private label, selling only for CNA cards for CNA customers, and selling for the open market. But in the open market, they had no competitive advantage. So in the end of the day, they had to change their business, pivoting and finding the best approach in the best niche market. So analytics gave all those companies the competitive advantage in the niche that they were exploring. So I hope you felt this to deep into this amazing world of analytics and big data during one of my courses. So if you became interested in this course and want to go deep and understand in depth what analytics is about, I do recommend you to read my article called "Do You Fear an Analytics-Driven Competitor?" You should. It goes in depth and explains a little bit more in what I've explained it in this short video. And again, thank you very much, and see you